Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. I would like to acknowledge that we're within the territory of the Seashelt First Nations, and welcome to a special board meeting of Tuesday, November 15th, 2020. I'd like to call us to order, and we'll talk about adoption of the agenda. Is there no changes? Move. Seconded. All in favor? Good. We can get on. We have no minutes. We have no business arising from minutes and unfinished business. We have no presentations and delegations, but we do have a report. And I believe everybody has the report in front of them. And so, I need a motion to receive the report. Seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I believe our CAO, Mr. McKinley, you're going to present this for us.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome everyone that's joined us in the gallery. It's good to see so many people here today. Thank you for being here. While I'm the report author, I'm certainly not the content expert on this one, and I've got GM Shelley Gagnon here to help me out, GM Remco Rosenboom. I also have Alan Van Velzen and Graham Don from our Recreation Department to handle questions as we talk about the potential for provision of ice at the Sunshine Coast Arena. At our inaugural meeting and orientation last week, you were told that sometimes we have to come in hot with imperfect information that leads to you making difficult decisions. And we were not wanting to test that or show you that right out of the gate, but this is one of those times where we've got the best information we could put together in the time that we had. We hope that through the information presented and the questions you may have, we will put you in a position to feel comfortable making a decision. And with that, we'll take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Do we have questions here? I think we're right into that. Questions on the report?
Can we get a synopsis from staff?
Yeah.
Could we get a synopsis of the report? Mm-hmm. Is there anybody in a position to do that for us?
A synopsis in terms of where are we at with the various options and what might happen depending on which ones you choose?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. We can.
Thank you. I will have to apologize. I'm fresh back from holiday, so I've been gone for almost a couple of weeks. So when you talk about coming in hot, that's me as of yesterday, getting an update and going through my over 300 emails yesterday. So I appreciate that our CAO has written this report on our behalf with knowledge from our subject matter experts over in the corner there. So where we're at is, as part of stage 3, when stage 3 happens, we have water regulations that we need to enact upon, similar to our residents at large. And so that impacts a lot of our recreation facilities, like our spray parks, our hot tubs, our ability to wash our buses, etc. Along comes stage 4, and it is, although not by regulation a requirement, it is our practice through our own diligence for use of water to not install ice at the Sunshine Coast Arena during stage 4 water restrictions. That was then escalated even further last week when during the state of local emergency order 2 came out that actually prohibited the installment of ice at the Sunshine Coast Arena with the Chapman water system. So where we're at today is to be able to talk to you about options. So if you want ice in the Sunshine Coast Arena in the fastest way possible, as in the next 8 to 10 days, it is staff's opinion that the only way to do that is through the use of the Chapman system. If we want ice in at some point in the near future, we certainly can look at alternatives such as using water from an alternate source, whether that be trucking it in, what that all might require, we can certainly look at. What the financial implication of that is, we are uncertain at this point in time. It sounds like there's offers to do some donations. There will also be some requirements for us from an ice plant perspective to get permissions from our plant inspectors, Safety BC. We may have to install some certain equipment in order to do so. None of that has been planned out, but it certainly could be explored, which would enable us to get ice in potentially, but not within the next 8 to 10 days. So really, we've presented, I believe, 3 options to the board today, one of which is to continue on with adhering to the order, order number 2, which is to use the Sunshine Coast Arena only as a dry land facility. The second is to explore the option of using an alternate water source to install ice at the arena, which will take some time. The financial implications of that are unknown at this point in time, so we could come back with that information, or we can install without understanding the financial implications. Or the third option is that we can request that the mayor of Sechelt and the chair of the board remove the Sunshine Coast Arena specifically from the order that permits us then to install ice at the Sunshine Coast Arena, which would go against our practice, but it is still permitted. So that is a synopsis of the options that are in front of you in the report, and we're happy to answer questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Gagnon. That was very clear. I think we probably now are taking any questions that the directors may have. Director Stamford, if you could use your virtual hand on the board, it would actually make it the order of speaking easier for me. So okay. Right now I have Director Stamford and Director Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I am interested in, when we're looking at option 2, I don't have an indication of what kind of staff time we'd be looking at in terms of going through the options for support from other sources. So I would like a better indication of what kind of staff time we'd be looking at.
Thank you for the question. It's really difficult for me to tell you. I can tell you it will be time consuming, but it really depends on what comes up for options as well. So if we're looking at needing to source from a different system and we're needing to procure trucks to deliver it, that's more time consuming than if we have a donation of trucking. That would take less time. So I can tell you it will take staff time to explore the alternatives. If a financial analysis is required, that's including the financial team's time as well. More time to do the investigation than it would take us to simply install the ice if we could use a Chapman system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Director Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, nice to meet you, Shelley. I recognize we're all new here, but I think this is an opportunity for us to show the community a win. And this first came up about 10 days ago, thanks to some of the outreach from people in the community. I don't think we need to study things. I think we can get the recreation people going. The trucks, as you've seen today and yesterday, and we've known for some time, are available. The water, just to be clear from what I read in the report that we got a few minutes ago, the water that certainly I've been talking about is water coming from the well, not from the Sechelt Water Resource Center. This is not reclaimed water. It is water, groundwater from the well. And so I want to highlight that for the board, that this is not about using some water that may or may not have an issue. It is about groundwater that is tested regularly. So you know, I guess I'm looking for let's get on with it, let's get it done. Even the fire departments, I gather, are ready to step up and help truck water from the well at the Water Resource Center. I don't understand, and I'd be curious why it is 8 to 10 days, because the research that I've done and what's been shared with me is that it can be done in 4 days. Not like the Vancouver Canucks or the Canadians that work 24/7, but that it can be done in quite a bit less than 8 to 10 days.
Thank you, Director.
So can I just clarify if
would,
there was a question in there?
You'd like to hear the question again?
Well, I think the question, there was a question around the timing. That was the question. So although I can appreciate different plants might have different speeds, we, through experience, 8 to 10 days. 8 would probably be really quick, especially given that the weather's a bit cooler. We could do it in 8, but I'm going to look over at my expert, and that is what we have always required, and that is what we're saying we require.
Thank you.
May I clarify, Chair? Up to you.
Okay.
Is that because of the condensers and the refrigeration systems that we have?
Thank you for the question. It's probably more technical, so I'm going to get my technical guy to answer that, because he'll use all sorts of language that I don't typically use.
Thank you for the question. That is related to the plant capacity that we have, as well as the methods that we use to install our ice. Different arenas do have different methods, but currently what we have in place that we can utilize to install our ice does take a minimum of 8 days.
Thank you. The next one I have on my list is Director Bax.
Yeah, I'm very interested in option 2. I was wondering where there were people that have stepped up and said that they would use their trucks and get water. Do we have a list of the people that have volunteered for that? And are they aware of the volume of water that's required to create the ice and to maintain it?
Who will answer that question? GM Gagnon or?
Just for the viewing audience, we only have a certain length in our microphone, so we play a little bit of musical chairs here. So thank you for the indulgence. So I think there's just a couple of things that I want to make sure I clarify. So my understanding is that there is a desire to have the ice installed in a very expedient manner to which we could then successfully host a tournament next weekend. That is one thing that I believe is on the table right now. And I just want to be clear that by using an alternate source of water, we will be very challenged to meet that timeline. And in fact, we don't believe we can, because we have to get certain things signed off on by our plant inspectors to be able to use an alternate water source. So that is a challenge for us to install the ice. It is not, the challenge is not as great for us to maintain the ice, to do the exploration around what it would take to maintain ice with an alternate source. But if you want ice in by next weekend, we will not be able to accommodate that with an alternate water source. We could accommodate the continued maintenance of the ice, potentially with an alternate water source. Do the trucking, those folks that have stepped up graciously to donate time, to truck in water, do they understand the requirements? If I go by what was published in the Sunshine Coast Reporter, around 26,000 liters a day, I would say that they don't, because as your report shows you, it's much more than that. However, I'm quite confident that the community is very generous at this point in time, and it's just a matter of having conversations around what it would take and what it would take to sustain it. So I can't answer yes or no to that question because we haven't had those conversations. But if the board wants us to explore the installation and or the maintenance of ice with another water source, we will go and have those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Director White.
When I look at option 3, and it's Chapman system only in the recommended wording, the Chapman system has been supplemented by Gibson's water very, very recently this summer and last summer. So I'm wondering if that is an option that could be part of option 3 in going ahead with option 3, but with the proposal, an aligned proposal that the SCRD asked Gibson's if it has more water to supplement. And I know that I understand from other conversations that Gibson's water can't be pumped all the way to the Seashell Arena, but if it could be, then create enough capacity to make this happen in the Seashell area.
I believe GM Rosenboom will be answering that question.
I will try. So, sorry, I missed up. So, Town of Gibson's water is currently not added to the water system of the Chapman. We could activate it, and if activated, it would create additional Chapman water from our Chapman water treatment plant that would be available within the system. That's current state of affairs. It would create excess capacity in our system by turning on Chapman, turning on the Town of Gibson's water supply, emergency water supply to the Chapman system. If that water might be required in a couple of days or a couple of weeks from now to provide to residents or to provide fire flow, that's to be seen. So, so that's my answer. I cannot. There is no guarantee that the Town of Gibson's water, even if we run it full time until the end of the winter, that it would provide the additional flow we need to maintain the ice without triggering other measures to be implemented.
Thank you. It's a follow-up question.
Yeah, so this might be more of a question for the board. It's more of a question about what our options are, but staff may have some opinions on this. Is it viable to look at option 3 and 2 to really push option 3 right now, backfill the capacity with Gibson's as much as we can to make this happen, this initial startup of the arena happen, and then start work at option 2 as well, in order to look at other sources for that longer term that the GM is talking about.
Thank you. That's a great question. My answer would be that it is absolutely possible to install the ice with a Chapman system. It is absolutely possible to explore an alternate water source to maintain the ice. There just remains the risk that the alternate water source doesn't work, maybe maybe not, and also the financial risk that is unknown in terms of what, if any, additional costs it might be. So I think it's not that it's not possible to explore, it's just it has risks that are unknown to us at this point in time.
Thank you. I will go down the list then, and that would be Director Bax next.
Can you give me a couple of details on what it entails to approve water from another source?
Excuse us for a minute while we just switch chairs.
Thank you for the question. A lot of it depends on what the water source is. If it's like a good quality potable water source, I think the approval process is pretty simple. If it's another source where the quality of the water is potentially questionable, we'd likely have to do some water testing. We could potentially have to involve Coastal Health to make sure that they have no concerns over using a non-potable water source. And it also potentially has implications through Technical Safety BC that regulates the operation of our refrigeration plant.
I see you're looking puzzled. Did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
I was told through my friends that the people willing to bring the water were willing to bring it from Pender Harbor, where they do have potable water that would be that could be expedited. Would it be as simple as that? As simple as them going up to Pender Harbor and picking up water and bringing it to the plant?
As far as getting it to the arena, yes. Once we get it to the arena, we have to have some method to actually store the water on site. We'd have to have pump systems installed in the arena to actually put the water into the arena system. And there is a requirement to have additional safeties in place on our refrigeration plant. I've spoken to our Technical Safety BC inspector, and that is a requirement from him in order to be able to look at this option.
Could you do both at the same time? Could you bring water in from the Chapman system and from the alternate system at the same time?
We could. It's actually preferred from my perspective to operate the plant on the Chapman system because that removes the additional safeties and risks involved in operating the plant, and just use the alternate water supply for ice resurfacing and actually installing the ice.
All right, we just stepped out of a emergency operations center meeting about the water system, and it's in not very good shape right now. So this is one of our concerns.
Yes, I believe that was a statement. Next up on our list is Director Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Mayor White. I think we have to be creative here. We need to move with things. There's the topic of are trucks available? Is water sources safe? Have been on the table for at least a week or 10 days. So I would encourage staff to expedite that. Appreciate, Shelley, you're back from vacation, but this is an opportunity for this community, and Mayor White, thank you. I think essentially, I think what you're suggesting is we take Gibson's water to backfill, if that's not a technical term, but backfill into the Chapman water supply. We would then have Chapman water to get the ice in, and potentially whether it's from Pender Harbor or from 1.8 kilometers away at the Water Resource Center well, we could be using that for the maintenance on an ongoing basis. So I'd certainly encourage that we move on that expediently. Thank you.
I now see Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. No questions. I'm going to take a stab at a motion here, and we'll see if we get a seconder for it. I am looking at option 3, but I'm going to add an additional "and that" clause. So that would be that staff initiate Sunshine Coast Arena operations using water from the Chapman system, and that the SCRD board request the board chair and District of Sechelt Mayor to amend the water use restriction order number 2 to facilitate operating the Sunshine Coast Arena with water from the Chapman system, and that the SCRD board request the town of Gibson supply supplemental water until such time that staff are able to determine the viability of using trucked water to maintain the ice.
I see we have a seconder. Now we can have some discussion on the motion. Oh, some clarity?
Yes, please. If I could just get clarity on that, would that also include coming back to the board with an understanding of the financial implication of that? Just to be clear on whether we're just launching that or whether it actually requires board approval for the continuation.
let's see, can we add that without going to an addendum?
I mean,
Probably not.
I would say that financial viability is a part of it. If we find it's gonna cost us $100,000 a week to maintain it, that's a different conversation than if it can be done for 5. I didn't include it in the motion, but I'm happy to see if anybody wants to amend it.
Are we happy that it's understood as in the motion? No. No? Would anybody like to propose an amendment to the motion? Maybe we could get the motion read back so we could understand it, make sure we understand it.
Do we need that?
Thank you, Chair. If I might, so in order for staff to have clear direction, I think what's missing from the motion is clarity in terms of do we proceed and are you amending the financial plan unknown to what that financial implication is, or are we coming back to the board to get approval should we need to make an amendment to the financial plan?
Yes, that's a good question. It would sound like we should have an amendment to it so that we can get financials done. Shall I ask, see if we could get a suggested amendment? Would that,
Remco's got his hand up too.
okay? Could we have a suggested amendment, Remco? Not up for it. Anybody else want to give it a try?
Can I further add to that? So the voting is going to be depending on what option you go with. So based on this resolution right now as it's crafted, I am going to suggest this is administration and operation of the regional water service. So the participants in that service will be responsible for the costs. So I just want to make that clear. If we are amending the financial plan, that the impacts of those costs will go to area A, B, D, E, F, and the District of Seashelt.
You may need a different seconder. In hindsight.
I think we're going to need a different seconder in that case. Because we have
I'll
a
second
seconder
that.
that's not
That's fine.
involved.
I'll second it if that helps.
Well,
Yeah. Well,
corporate officer,
Yes, Chair.
realizing that the seconder was not a voting member, do we need to find a new seconder?
No, I think we're fine. The motion
fine
on the
with
floor
it?
is fine.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may,
Director,
the GM would like to add to
could
that.
I?
So, Chair, if I may,
just hang on, I want to make sure Director Henderson's okay. We go back to staff first?
Yeah, I'm okay. Actually, if I may, to try and shorten this, I'm fine. The report we were presented said an initial projection of the weekly cost could be between $5,000 and $10,000. I'm fine with us putting a cap, perhaps 15,000, to test the board's view that it would be at a cost of 15,000, not more than $15,000, so that there is a measurement. I frankly don't expect it to be anything close to that, but I respect the need to give you some guidance, some parameters in which to work. Thank you. So that would be an amendment to my amendment to the motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the amendment? Well, I should probably go to staff and see if it, yeah. Okay, so we're going to need a seconder. I'll second it. Okay, the motion's been seconded. I have a lot of hands up, so I think I will go back to. Staff. Oh, excuse me, staff. GM Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to, because I'm the one that's going to have to enact this, I just want to make sure that I think what the intent of the recommendation is that we install with Chapman, that we start to do the work right now to understand and to actually enact up to $15,000 a week, that we maintain it with an alternate water source, not the Chapman. So it's installed with Chapman, maintained up to a maximum of $15,000 a week with an alternate water source. Is that correct?
To me, it's correct. And part of that involves availing ourselves of the water offer from the town of Gibsons in the beginning.
Okay, and so then, and we maintain it on Chapman until we can get this alternate water source up and running. So there may be that time period in there. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was crystal clear. Thank you.
It's getting to be quite convoluted here.
Yeah, sorry, I can hear.
I wonder if we should make sure we understand the motion or if we should go to directors first. What would you prefer? I think I'll go to see if we understand the motion, and then we'll go back to directors. Could the motion be read back now the way it is?
That staff initiate Sunshine Coast Arena operations using water from the Chapman system, and that the SCRD board requests the board chair and District of Sechelt mayor to amend the water use restriction order 2 to facilitate operating the Sunshine Coast Arena with water from the Chapman system, and that the SCRD request supplemental water source from the town of Gibsons until staff determine the viability of using an outside source of water. And further that, the financial plan be amended to allow an amount of up to $15,000 per week until an alternate water source is in place. No?
No, because it's up to $15,000 per week till the end of the season.
Until the end of the season.
To be
Okay.
funded from,
Or until,
to be funded from need to be in there.
Sorry, what?
To be funded from, $15,000 to be funded from 370 regional water operating reserves.
To be funded from regional water. Okay, so, and that the financial plan be amended up to an amount of $15,000 per week to be funded from regional water
Operating reserves.
until,
until the end of the season.
or until level 4 is lifted. Or until,
Actually, until
Until level.
stage 4 is lifted. Okay.
Point of order, just to
Yes.
try to get us on track
Let's
here.
try that
We're
again.
discussing the amendment right now, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, so we're just discussing the amendment,
yes.
and we're gonna vote on it, okay. Or
I
I'm not
believe we're
sure I
still
can.
discussing the amendment yet. Okay. Now, Director Henderson, is that the amendment? Does that read as the amendment you were expecting?
Yes, yes, Chair. I think we can live with that.
Thank you. And this, we had a seconder for that? Okay. All in favor of the amendment? Thank you. Any discussions on the motion as amended? Let's see. I'll go by the order of the hands up because it's been up and down so many, so I will go with Director McMahon first.
Okay. I know that everybody's trying to come up with a compromise, which I appreciate. This, however, it seems to me commits us to having the ice in at the arena for the rest of the season. Because if we go to the trouble and expense of installing the ice, and then we decided that we're unable to maintain it, or that we can't get an alternate source of water, then we've committed to maintaining it with Chapman water, essentially. And that's a problem. We just, as someone mentioned, we just came out of an emergency operations center meeting. We are likely to be in a state of emergency all winter. And we are looking at contingencies for how to keep the hospital running if we run out of water. I mean, it's that serious. So while I appreciate the time and energy that everybody has put into this tournament, to weigh the tournament against having firefighting water and hospital water is really tough. We may not have enough water this winter. So I have difficulty with this, although I really appreciate the community stepping up to try and find a solution at the last minute. But we really are crunched here.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Now we have Director White.
I just want to clarify on the town of Gibson situation. We're not in a situation where our water source is frozen, fortunately. So when we were at that emergency operations meeting, it was kind of, it was discussed what a normal winter looks like, where lakes are overflowing. I mean, that's the state we're in Gibson's with our water source. We're doing really well with our water. I checked yesterday. We have enough capacity to provide more water than we've already provided at this point, because we've got a lot now. So we can provide more water to the SCRD for this purpose. So I want to be clear about that. It's not just the maximum capacity that we already provided in the summer. We could do more. And I mean, at least get this started. And I don't know, I don't exactly read this motion as being binding the SCRD for the rest of the season. I think this can get us started. Then the integrating option 2, as Alton Toth, Director Toth suggested. We'll get reports on that and go from there. I think that's the key thing. I mean, we've asked for more reports on what can be done with getting alternative sources, and I'm not going to prejudge that process. We're going to have to see those reports and make decisions then.
Thank you. Did staff have a comment? I see a mic on there. No. Okay. So now we're down to Director Stamford.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a lot of experience with hockey, so I'm not sure when is the season expected to end. March? And a follow-up?
What was the answer to that question?
March
March?
is the end of the season.
Sorry, Chair, if I may. So we typically take ice out of the Sunshine Coast Arena in the middle of March, and ice stays in Gibson's longer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the option that is on the table, will that give the tournament an opportunity to run? Is there enough time with option 3 to have the tournament?
It's the 25th. They need ice by that.
My apologies. Yes, because the way the motion reads is that we can use water from the Chapman system to install, which enables us to start installing right away, which would get ice in time for the tournament. That is correct.
Okay, and I have a follow-up comment. We really haven't looked at the comments in the report, which says that the option 3, as it stood by itself, was not supported by our Emergency Operations Center. And we also heard that despite generous offers by Gibson's, the capacity of our infrastructure would only allow a certain amount of Gibson's water to come in at any one time. That's my understanding. Is that correct through the chair?
Staff?
Thank you for the question. From a general manager perspective, yes, there's currently a pumping capacity limitation at the town of Gibson's that does not allow us to pump more than 1,500 cubic meters a day into our system. If we actually can use it all, that depends on other factors, but up to 1,500, that is currently the maximum based on the infrastructure within the town of Gibsons. And from an switching hats, EUC director perspective, I support your the statement that is in the report in terms of me not recommending option 3.
Thank you. Next up would be Director Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that this is to get the tournament as much as it is to get the ice surface in for the next several months. I am challenging staff and have been for a while about being creative in how we find the water that we need, and I fully expect that we will find solutions within the next week or two. So the idea that it would cost $15,000 to maintain is, I think, way more than you'll need. My speculation, but I'm trying to give you the latitude to do that. The other thing is I don't feel that we're taking water from the watershed. I think that the issue is we're taking water from Gibsons to start and then from groundwater shortly thereafter. And I want to echo the comments that if something changes, if we feel that there's a reason to change, I certainly will support a change. And I'm sorry if that means taking the ice out at Christmas. If other more dramatic issues occur that oblige us to do that, I certainly will support taking or stopping making ice at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Director Bax now.
I'd like some clarification on the motion as it stands. Does it state that once the ice is the care of the ice has been switched over to the volunteers who are going to be bringing water to maintain it? Is that a point where where we can shut the tap off from the Chapman Creek supply and allow them to continue to maintain it as long as we're in stage 4?
Thank you. So the way I think the intent of the motion is that we would find alternate sources of water to maintain it and no longer draw from the Chapman. Whether or not that's possible is yet to be seen. That's part of the exploratory work, but I believe that would be the intent of the way the motion reads.
Director White.
Also, I just wanted to address, I believe there's a part of the motion that talks about basically going back to the EOC, because the EOC is, he was Paul, Chair. It's the 3 people who, that's part of the motion, right? That Director Toth brought forward, is going back to the EOC, yeah, and Mayor Henderson and our Chair.
Yes, I believe it was.
So that would be, that's integrated into this. It's not, I don't see this as being against the EOC. We're actually asking their permission as part of the motion.
I believe that's not quite right. Corporate Officer?
I can read that back for clarification. That portion of the resolution is, and that the SCRD board request the board chair and District of Sechelt Mayor amend the water use restriction order 2 to facilitate operating the Sunshine Coast Arena with water from the Chapman system.
And would that be via their authority at the EOC, or what other authority would they be having?
Maybe I can clarify. The water use restriction order are signed by the head of the elected head of the different jurisdictions, and the water use order is currently in place and signed by US Paul for the Sechelt Nation Government District, as well as at that time Vice Chair McMahon for the Regional District and Mayor Henderson for the DOS, District of Sechelt. So it is based on the recommendation from the EOC that they put those restrictions in place, and it's their prerogative to amend, or it's only up to, it's their responsibility and their to to make changes to them as they feel fit.
Thank you. You have a follow-up, Director White?
We're not going against the EOC, we're actually.
Maybe I can clarify,
can
you're going
amend.
against the recommendation from the EOC director if this motion would be adopted.
But we're asking them to change. Okay.
Okay, the next up is Director McMahon.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the next step. So if we pass this motion now, then it goes to the EOC director who calls up the signatories on the order? Is that, how does this work? And does it require all 3 signatories to agree?
Thank you for the question. The Sechelt Nation Government District is currently not a party to this motion, for the reason that the facility is located in the district of Sechelt. So, that's why the mayor of the district of Sechelt would need to amend the order. The reason why the SRD chair needs to amend the order as well is because his staff would turn on the taps. And otherwise his staff would operate against his own order. So that's why the SRD chair would need to amend the order as well. And the US Paul from the Sechelt Nation Government District is therefore not engaged in this potential amendment.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, Director McMahon?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to do all the little nitpicking questions, but here it is, just to be clear. So we're voting as the regional water is the way we're voting right now, and so that would not include the town of Gibsons or Area A, am I correct?
I can clarify that Area A is part of the Regional Water Service. Town of Gibsons is not.
Okay, seeing no further hands up, I think it's time to vote on the motion. All those, sorry, we do have a hand.
I just would like to offer one more point of clarification for the final and that with respect to the financial plan as I was listening to the discussion. So I'm hearing both Chapman water as well as an alternate water source, which then brings in the community recreation facilities into that financial equation. So I would recommend that the final and that be worded such as this, and that the financial plan be amended up to an amount of $15,000 per week to be funded from either regional water or community recreation facilities as deemed appropriate until the water use restrictions order has been lifted.
Okay, I hear that, but I believe that that's an amendment to an amendment, which we cannot do. Am I got that correct?
We haven't voted on this amendment, so
Would we vote on the original motion and then?
it was moved, was it? It was seconded?
Yes, it was
Okay.
moved and seconded,
Okay.
the amended
Okay.
motion. And so
Well, we
were
don't
ba-
need to get into the procedural gymnastics of it, but if you wish to, we can. But I would be satisfied if it's up to the board, actually, if they would
Okay,
want to
would-
consider this.
Would you be happy to accept the amendment as described? Okay. I do believe now that everybody gets to vote because it's recreation as well. Okay,
With
let's-
sorry, Area A does not get to vote on matters pertaining to community recreation.
and yet I do on the water. So now we gotta, what do? We
Right,
vote
so
twice?
this is one of those resolutions that I talked to you about, that sometimes two particular services may apply. It's my opinion that it's more relevant to the water service participants.
More relevant to the water service permit?
The financial impact, maybe, but not understanding the mechanics of the install and how those costs will be accrued. It's up to the board. And then the other alternative you always have is the default corporate vote. All directors, 1 vote each. Sorry, it's complicated.
Oh, okay. Corporate officer, could I have a recommendation on how you think this should go?
I'm going to recommend a default corporate vote of all directors, 1 vote each.
Can I make that ruling? Okay, that's what I would like to see. Thank you. So we're going to vote on the issue. All directors have 1 vote each. No, I think we agreed that that amendment was part of the main motion already. So we're gonna vote on the motion as read just now. So, all those in favor? All those opposed? Looks like it passes. Would those opposed like their vote recorded? Yes, yes, yes? Okay. Thank you. That was a tough one. I do believe that is the end of these proceedings. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Seconder? All in favor? And thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming.